If you're looking to reboot your customer experience metrics, my recommendation is to revisit Net Promoter Score. Bit controversial, I know, and I'm going to explain very briefly as to the reason why. So if you're not familiar, NPS is a metric for measuring customer health on a scale of 0 to 10. It puts your customers into three buckets of detractors, likely to churn, passives who are fairly neutral, and then advocates who are likely to be retained or recommend. So we all know there's significant challenges with NPS. We only have to look at the Wall Street Journal article, which was entitled NPS as a Flawed Measurement of Customer Loyalty. Arguments are really well rehearsed, and number one is that it's a self-reported metric which could include a lot of bias. Plenty of examples of how it can be manipulated. Secondly is it's a single dimension measure of customer experience. So, it's really hard to connect the verbatim, which is usually the driver, and the why to the actual number. And then finally, it's not a predictor of future revenue. Certainly the academic research on this is really patchy. And when I've looked at it with our own customer data, we can see NPS goes up and profitability, revenue goes down. So what can you do about it? Well, three practical tips. Number one is that you can keep the metric and use predictive AI. Essentially what we're trying to do here is we're trying to link the driver, which is a theme, to understanding if we were to resolve that driver, what impact that would have in the NPS. Give you a quick example. HealthScope, which is the leading private hospital in Australia, were able to increase their NPS by 2.5 points by taking a predictive AI approach. Ultimately, they were able to identify that blood pressure cuffs, these are the cuffs that are put on patients to monitor blood pressure, were fitted too tightly, obviously going off quite often and leaving patients with bruising on their arms. They were able to take a proactive action on this with the prediction that this would increase patient trust and ultimately impact the Net Promoter Score. Secondly, where you can keep the question but change how you ask the question. The technique that I've seen used really well is a technique called memory writing, where you're getting your customers or employees to write in the third person. Often allows them to become not only more verbose in the verbatims, but obviously memory triggers emotions. We often have higher recall of both negative and positive experiences. Give you a real world example. Allstate, one of the world's largest insurance companies, used this approach for the first 90 days of recruiting new employees. We're able to identify that their onboarding process was generating some friction points, which was eroding confidence and trust in the process. Essentially, they were given all the goodness in the last 10 days of the experience rather than the first 30. They flipped that about and were able to reduce the onboarding time by 20%. This is something that Forrester picked up on as a really good example of going beyond their surveys. And then finally, I'd suggest where you can actually change the metric and change the question. Great thing about this is instead of NPS, you can align the metric question to your business objective. And then ultimately you are able to use the open-end question to capture the key barriers that would allow you to, if removed, achieve that business objective. Just to give you an example, one of the world's leaders in technology were interested in learning how confident their employees were to maintain customer service during COVID. This was a metric question on a scale of 0 to 10. With that metric, they were able to ask the question, what are the barriers at home and at work? We were then able to identify if they removed poor Wi-Fi, addressed mental health issues, addressed office setup, that would increase the NPS by 13%. So for 2023, you might reinvent NPS as an incremental improvement rather than a big bang change.